Sell Mo Salah and buy Erling Haaland. That is the big deliberation going into game week 29 and something I am considering for my team, and I gotta explain why. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like in for 400. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, let's take a look at my current team for game week 29, and it is not looking good at all. I'm sure a lot of managers out there maybe have logged into their teams for game week 29, might not even known it was a blank game week, and it could be in a worse position than mine. But I think there are a lot of managers who have got problems this game week, unless you have been incredibly lucky and you haven't had injuries or suspensions like myself, and then obviously I am envious of you. So let's take a look at my current team for game week 29, and I've got 2 free transfers, which is worth noting, and I have to put it out there, I've discussed it in previous videos, I'm not looking to free hit. I know right now the team looks terrible, but I've always geared to not use the free hit, and that is going to be my plan going forward. So right now we have got Vandenberg injured, not ideal. It doesn't sound like he's going to be back for game week 29. I don't think he's back in training yet, so I wouldn't be holding up any hope there. And of course we've got the Cunha suspension, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. I see people complaining, it's just how the game lands. In another world, we buy Chris Wood a couple of weeks back, we don't have this issue. Some managers get lucky, some get unlucky, part of the game. And then, of course, we've got the 4 players that I knew, of course, were blanking in Isak, Munoz, Trent and Mo Salah. So we already know those 4 were going to blank regardless, and I knew this team was going to land something like this. Hence why I tried to get to 2 free transfers at least, and then understand whether a points hit needs to be done or not in this blank game week. So right now, looking at the rest of the team before we come into the combinations, we've got the double Everton defence in Pickford and Mykolenko. Not amazing, but at home, I think that's okay. I'm happy to field that. And Gabriel at home against Chelsea. Again, Chelsea looking pretty awful going forward, so I'm fine with that. In terms of the midfield 4, we've got the double Bournemouth midfield. Semenyo went off a little bit early, but it looked like it was just cramp, and his minutes are always fantastic in that Bournemouth team. So I think that's fine. Cliver, again, is perfectly fine. Mbeumo away against Bournemouth, not ideal, but again, I'm fine with it. And Cole Palmer, a bit of a problem right now. Playing 75 minutes, obviously went off. Sounds like he had a slight sickness bug or whatever. Hopefully recovers for the Arsenal game, but not in a great run of form at all right now. The only thing going for him is that he has a fixture. So selling a player that has a fixture in a team like mine is very difficult to do. Then, of course, we've got Visser away against Bournemouth. Not ideal at all. I don't like that. And then, of course, everybody else we've discussed. So we have to decide right now what to do with this team with 2 free transfers. I'm going to go through 3 different combinations. We're going to look at selling Mo Salah, selling Cole Palmer, and then a completely rogue alternative route. But the big player that is featured in pretty much all the combinations is going to be Erling Haaland. And we've got to discuss whether he is a priority buy for us who are not free hitting in game week 29. So let's take a look at that right now. So game week 29 really does feel like a pivotal game week because of this man, Erling Haaland. It really does feel like I've avoided him all season apart from the opening 6 game weeks, and I've been absolutely fine with it. But now with the blank game week in 29 and my team looking pretty damn woeful, I need to decide whether I buy in the big dog or not and keep him for numerous weeks, because this is the week if you are going to buy him to do so. So we need to discuss a few reasons for and against bringing him in. So first up, the pros. 0.81 XG per 90, 1.43 big chances per 90. Regardless of what you think of Man City or Erling Haaland, he still has some of the best numbers of all the forwards in the game. So even though Man City have been unpredictable, he still gets the chances, and that is not going to change in these upcoming game weeks, I'm certain of it. Secondly, he covers the free hit ownership. Free hit in game week 29 just naturally, because some managers have looked at their teams and been like, oh, this looks terrible, I'm going to use my free hit to resolve it this week. His ownership is going to be pretty big, and of course, captaincy on him in game week 29 is only going to enhance that. So bringing him in for game week 29 obviously covers that effective ownership. And thirdly, the big one and why I'm considering him is that I deem him the best captaincy for game week 29 and game week 30. And if we're going to take a points hit or whatever to buy Erling Haaland at this price point, you have to captain him at least in game week 29. And personally, I think you've got to do it in game week 30 as well to really justify you taken sacrifices in your team to bring him in. Now, you can see the fixtures here. Brighton at home, I do not like at all. Brighton across the course of this season, and probably last season as well, shown that they have that underdog mentality with the players' ability to back it to actually get results against the big teams. And we've seen it across the course of this season. So I do not think this is a game that Man City win necessarily. I think they could win it, but I would much rather this be an easier fixture than that of Brighton. The only thing going for Man City is that I do think Brighton can concede goals, and I do think City can score in this fixture. The big selling point for Bayern and Haaland this week is that you get the game week 30 fixture at home against Leicester. Now, of course, anything can change between now and then, but again, that is the big one. Captaincy of Erling Haaland at home against Leicester is the money fixture, and then beyond that is what it is, depending on when we choose to wildcard. The problems. Can we trust Man City? The answer is going to be no. We're not seeing that consistency from them where we can understand that they are now back. I thought we might see that against Nottingham Forest. We didn't at all. And that was a bit of a red flag that I need to understand if we are going to get that once again in game week 29 or not. And secondly, in order to get Erling Haaland, unfortunately, I don't have the team value in my team to just to sell somebody like an Mbeumo. I have to sell Salah, Palmer, and it's worth noting also Alexander Isak in order to get Erling Haaland. So whoever I sell to get in Erling Haaland is going to be a big dog regardless, and that's not an ideal position to be in. So right now, I do think Erling Haaland is a great buy, even though Man City are incredibly unpredictable. And what I want to do in a minute is show you the different combinations that we can get to Erling Haaland and then come to some sort of conclusion whether he is actually worth bringing in. But I do think he is a great buy just because of the captaincy options that are really not available outside of Haaland in game week 29. So with the plan to not free hit in game week 29, I think it's only right for me to build a game week 29 free hit to understand where is the ownership going to be, which players do I currently own, and which ones do I not that I deem key players to bring in. And I always like doing this because it just gives me a bit of context knowing what I'm going up against in game week 29. And of course, this might be valuable for those that are free hitting in game week 29 because I do think this is quite a template team, but I do like some of the differentials that you can own in this particular game week. So in terms of the goalkeeper, I think this one's really up for debate. Sells away against Ipswich, Pickford at home against West Ham. I feel those are going to be the popular picks. For my team right now, while I won't have any Nottingham Forest coverage, I'm perfectly fine going up against that with my Pickford choice. So I feel fine about that. When we look at the free hit defenders, I think Vardial is going to be in all of those. I think at home against Brighton is not a guaranteed clean sheet at all, but I think managers just kind of have to go there because he's a premium defender and he does offer some attacking potential. Gabriel, I still think will be in most free hits because Chelsea going forward are pretty woeful. And then I think the third defender is going to be a bit of a free hit. Aït-Nouri, this could easily be someone like an Ola Aina. But I think Aït-Nouri's upside will be the thing that is appealing. So again, I have Gabriel already. I don't have Aït-Nouri, but I think Mykolenko to cover Aït-Nouri, I'm perfectly fine with that in that. So the only thing I don't have is the premium defender alongside Gabriel in the shape of Vardial. Moving into the midfielders. Now, I think Kluivert is going to be in all of these, and I do currently have him, which is great. But I think the other midfielders I will not have coverage in. So I think managers are going to bring in Bruno Fernandes away against Leicester. I think that's a guarantee, and I really like him for that game week in isolation. Then I think managers will take a punt on a Man City midfielder, and I think Phil Foden probably will be the default pick. Do I love the Foden pick? Yes, he could do well, but am I that desperate to personally own Phil Foden? I'm not. So I would allow free hitters to go for Foden, and if he gets a 15-pointer, just put the hands up and say, well done, free hitters. I'm okay not owning Foden. The other one is going to be somebody like Gibbs White. Now, of course, I currently have like a Semenyo in my team or a Cole Palmer, and I think Gibbs White could do well away against Ipswich, but am I desperate to bring in a Forest midfielder? Not really. So the only ones that scare me in the midfield is going to be a Bruno Fernandes, and Foden, if he does what he does, it is what it is. I do currently have Mbeumo. I don't love the fixture, but I'm fine playing him maybe up against the Gibbs White in that game week. Finally, the forward line, and this is where I'm really scared because I currently have Visser as my only forward, and I think he's one of the weakest forwards you could own this game week because I think Beto's better with the home game against West Ham, and of course these three here. So we've already discussed Erling Haaland. We don't have to talk about that one. Chris Wood away against Ipswich is the really scary one because he will be massively owned, not only in free hits, but previously with ownerships in managers prior. So that is the big one. Chris Wood away against Ipswich, very scary not to own him. And then, of course, the other forward. Now, previously, of course, it was going to be Cunha away against Southampton, but now things have changed. And I think with the return of Evan Nielsen, I think some managers might go there. Now, again, I have Visser away against Bournemouth. I'm fine to do that in my kind of matchup against Evan Nielsen. I don't feel desperate to bring him in, but I really do like him as a differential. So when I look at the free hit team, the ones that really stand out and scare me are going to be Erling Haaland, Chris Wood, and Bruno Fernandes isn't one that scares me because ownership is still going to be quite low, but I really am envious for those that do have him in that fixture. Outside of that, I think I can live with the rest of the picks. I have players that can go up against the others and just kind of is what it is. But hopefully that's beneficial. Now let's take a look at how I'm going to get to Erling Haaland. Okay, so let's take a look at my Game Week 29 transfer plans, and the first combination is going to be selling Mo Salah. Now I get it, it sounds ridiculous. I mentioned it in the intro, but there is logic behind it. Just maybe some loose logic, maybe not justifiable. So let's take a look at the reasons why I might be selling Mo Salah. Now we discussed in terms of Erling Haaland being the big dog, and if I am going to bring him in, I got to sacrifice one of Mo Salah and Cole Palmer. Now, it goes without saying, if I sell Mo Salah, it's going to give me way more money to buy an alternative midfielder. So we got to understand whether there are midfielders out there that can justify Mo Salah being sold. So this route here means that I'll be selling him. Not ideal. Now, Game Week 29, of course, is a blank game week. Game Week 30 is at home against Everton. Few caveats here. I'll be looking to wildcard in Game Week 31, so I'll only be without Mo Salah for Game Week 30 because, of course, he doesn't play in 29. Could he do well at home against Everton? Absolutely. But, of course, if I'm selling Mo Salah, I am buying Erling Haaland. And Leicester at home, I feel like, is a good alternative captaincy to that of Mo Salah. Probably famous last words, but I do think Erling Haaland could outscore Salah in that fixture in isolation. The problem is that even though my logic is that I'm going to buy Mo Salah back in a wildcard in Game Week 31 if I feel like it is necessary, we got to understand that the players' price points are different. So, for example, I bought Mo Salah at 12.7 million. He's now priced 13.8, and I would sell him at 13.2. So that's all well and good, but then in Game Week 31, if I look to buy him back, I don't really see his price falling that much. And then I'll have to buy him at so much more of an expensive price. And with my team value being pretty poor as it is, it's not really a luxury that I can do with my team. So I really have to make sure that if I'm selling Salah, I buy big dogs that can actually bring me points. I can't be selling Mo Salah and then buying someone like an Elanga who is really, really flaky as a pick potentially. So if I'm going to go down this route, I've got 2 free transfers. I am going to have to take a -4 to really double down on these moves. And again, that doesn't sound great when I say it out loud. So Mo Salah out to Bruno Fernandes, I feel like, is a move that I'll just have to make. I feel like Bruno Fernandes is a player that I think is a fantastic differential for Game Week 29. And again, if I'm selling Mo Salah, I feel like I have to replace him with a player that has equal potential to get double-digit returns. And Bruno's been doing that recently. Erling Haaland would then come in for Alexander Isak. Now, I haven't really touched on Isak. The problem with Isak is that Game Week 30 is fantastic for him at home against Brentford. And I have to buy Isak back in Game Week 31 wildcard because they have Leicester away and a double in Game Week 32. So I basically am selling 2 players that I kind of want back in my team, which is not a great position to be in at all. So he would be the sacrifice for Erling Haaland. And then I would have to free up some more funds. Trent out to Vardy probably would be the preference for me to go in on the Brighton game and, of course, the game in Game Week 30 at home against Leicester. And the team would look something like this. Of course, Mikalenko would come in for Munoz. And you see at the top right the summary of my transfers. Trent out for Vardy, Isak out for Haaland, and Salah out for Bruno Fernandes. Do I love selling those players on the left? No. But do I gain an additional fixture with those players on the right? I do. And a captaincy option in the shape of Erling Haaland. Now, coming into Game Week 30, because remember, the moves that I'm making are for a 2-game week period, not just for Game Week 29 in isolation. The team would look like this for Game Week 30. And if I was to keep the team like this, I think it'd be perfectly fine. But also, why I would be keeping Cunha is being a bit of a placeholder for a differential once again in the shape of Mateta. He will be back for that Southampton game, which is fantastic for those Palace players. And then I'll just bring him in for someone like a Vissa, and the team will look like this for game week 30. Now, I don't have Liverpool, which is not an ideal position to be in at all, and I wouldn't have Alexander Isak at home against Brentford, but I would have Mateta as a bit of a differential, and I would still have the captaincy option of Erling Haaland. Team would look like that, and of course I would wildcard in game week 31. So the pros, I get Haaland, I've got Mateta for game week 30, I've got Bruno Fernandes for game week 29. Problems, I'm selling Salah, I'm selling Isak, and I'm taking a -4. But I feel like there is enough upside with those game week 29 moves to justify doing so. So that's a Salah move. Let's take a look at the Palmer route. So my other alternative and cash cow of bringing in Erling Haaland is going to be selling Cole Palmer. Now we have to understand with Cole Palmer that the big problem with selling him in my team is that he has a fixture in game week 29. So I've got issues with players blanking, I've got suspensions, and I've got injuries. So it doesn't really make any sense me selling a player that has a fixture, even though it is a really difficult fixture and Cole Palmer is completely out of form. Now, when we look at the sell price again, there isn't really any issues with Cole Palmer for me. So I'm not really fussed with the situation of selling him from a price perspective. But if I was to go down the same route of selling Isak and bringing in Erling Haaland, in order to sell Cole Palmer, you can see I've got very limited money available at 5.6 million. And again, it doesn't sound great me selling a player once again that has a fixture. So if I was to sell Cole Palmer, I go down to someone like an Elanga who's cheap and cheerful. It still doesn't really resolve any issues for my team. I still have Trent and Salah blanking, and I'm still having to take a -4 or a -8 just to put out 11 players this week. So for example, let's say I sacrifice someone like Trent and go back down to Vardial. Still, it's not a great position to be in. I'm taking a -4 and I don't feel like my team's any better. Palmer away against Arsenal or Elanga away against Ipswich. I mean, I don't really know which one I'd prefer, but I know I don't really want to sell Palmer to go to Elanga, and I'm getting rid of Isak as well. And then we come into game week 30, and yes, I still got Mo Salah, which is a huge plus, but then I've got Elanga at home against Man United, which is fine, and then Munoz comes in for Mikalenko. But do I feel like this team is that much better? Not really. So this is the big problem, is that selling Palmer is the preference and keeping Mo Salah, of course, is a priority for me. But my game week 29 team still looks pretty damn bad, even with a -4. And I don't feel like I'm really getting any huge benefits from that. So of the two, Palmer or Salah, as you can see, even though it's a really scary prospect, selling Mo Salah definitely is more beneficial for my team over those 2 game weeks. The big issue, of course, is me selling Salah and Isak, players that I know I'm going to want back in my team. So the only other solution really is that I understand that actually Erling Haaland isn't essential, and then we actually just go down a completely different route, which is going to be the third and final sort of plan for my team. So finally, if I take off my Erling Haaland lenses and I deem him not essential for game week 29 and game week 30, and again, it is quite scary not having him over those 2 games, then it would look something like this. And again, I find it very difficult to get to 11 players without taking a -4, as you can see. So if I was to keep Isak and keep Mo Salah, because I deem those just really important long term from a value perspective, then I think the only moves that I really could justify making is going to be Trent out for Vardial, because I do think Vardial is great for 29 and for game week 30. So that is a move that I can definitely get behind. And then if I'm not going to have Haaland, I have to have Chris Wood. And I got to sell Cunha and bring in Chris Wood, and he would then probably be the captain, which again, I don't love the idea of that, but is he probably the next best captain alongside Bruno Fernandes outside of Haaland? Probably. But again, as you can see, I still would then have to take a -4 to field 11 players. And if I'm keeping Salah, and I'm keeping Isak, and I'm keeping Munoz, the only player that I can really sell is going to be Van den Berg with 1.2 million in the bank. Now, Van den Berg out to someone like an 8 Nori could be justifiable. But then when we take a look at my team for game week 30, I don't need that defender in the game week 30 at all, because the 3 that I've currently got in Vardial, Gabriel and Munoz are fantastic. So I will be making a -4 for a defender for literally 1 game week, and that defender's got to come in clutch, otherwise it's not worth it at all. Then we look at the rest of the team. I think it looks good. I've got Wood at home against Man United, which I think is perfectly fine, and Isak at home against Brentford. We get to keep Salah, we keep Palmer. Team looks fine. And of course, I still have one additional transfer available with 1.2 million in the bank. So I could be a bit flexible if I wanted to. I could look at the fixtures and think to myself, actually, I feel like Mateta is a really, really important player. I'm 0.1 million short. We'd have to pray Mateta's price goes down with this blank game week coming up. But if that luxury was to happen, then maybe I could put myself in a position to bring in Mateta and maybe just bench someone like an Embuemo, and the team would look something like this. Now, this is probably the safe manager pick in terms of just being smart with my money and not being aggressive. But I don't see this team doing fantastic, and not having Erling Haaland in it does scare me. So even though this is the logical play, I can't see myself going down this route. And I think the Haaland first route of selling Salah is still my preference. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's video. Take a look at my early game week 29 transfer plans. Now, of course, we still got Monday Night Football. We got Champions League. We got Europa League. We got Conference League. I think it's really important not to make any early transfers. All it takes is an injury to a key player like Mo Salah, and all of a sudden, all the plans go out the window for a lot of managers out there. So I would still sit tight and see what happens during the midweek before we actually come to a conclusion on our plans. If you enjoyed today's video, please do consider dropping a like and of course hitting that subscribe button. Any questions, put them in the comment section. I'll be sure to get there. As you can see, I'm still really confused what to do with my team, but hopefully we can come to a conclusion before that deadline. I'll see you guys real soon. Take care. Cheers.